Yeah, so now the webinar is being recorded. So in case you miss something while we are presenting, or in case you feel that the pace of the presentation is a bit fast, you can go back later and watch the recording. So no need to worry about that. We'll also be sharing several documents throughout this webinar so that you can refer to them later after the webinar is done. Secondly, we will take all the questions through the chat since the number of people in this webinar is a bit high. It will not be possible to take voice messages as questions, but feel free to ask questions in the chat as we proceed. So the topic of today's webinar is machine learning transition roadmap, where we'll be teaching you about the best way to transition to machine learning through our own experiences. We have conducted multiple editions of this particular webinar before. So if some of you have already attended this webinar, it will be a great revision for you. And please ask questions in the chat in case you have attended this webinar before, so that you can learn new things and also be a bit more active. For many others, it might be a new experience, and I'm sure you will also learn a lot. Before we get started, it will be great if all of you can actually fill this form. We usually share this at the start of every webinar so that we have an idea of what the profile of different students is, and then we can tailor the webinar accordingly. So in the form, you'll see that there are questions such as the name, whether you're a student or working professional, your field of study, and then there is also questions about what is the level of your ML knowledge. So you can start filling this form. I'll come back to this in my fifth or sixth slide, and then I'll look at the responses which people have filled in. Okay, so today's agenda is going to be as follows. First, we are going to start with my story and how I transitioned to machine learning. Then we will move to this section on problems with traditional machine learning. So here first I'll give you a pathway which normally all students follow, and I'll also give you resources to follow that pathway. But after this point, I'll introduce something new, which I did for my transition to ML, and that's scientific machine learning, why it's so important, and how it completely changed my professional life. Then I'll explain a bit about the field of scientific machine learning itself so that everyone who is attending this webinar today can leave this webinar thinking how they can start their own scientific machine learning project. And as in all of our webinars, we have a lot of focus on research publications. So there will be a separate section towards the end where we'll talk about the importance of converting projects into research publications, because that makes a huge difference in the candidate's profile. In the last part of the webinar, we'll talk about the live courses which we are starting from January, and then we'll also have a Q&A section towards the end. But as I mentioned, please also keep on asking questions in the chat so that your doubts are clarified when the webinar proceeds. We'll try to finish everything in 1 hour so that the webinar is finished by 8 p.m. All right, so let's get started. First, I want to tell my story because I want to explain that the pathway which I'm going to share with all of you is not some pathway based on internet Googling or just looking at some blogs or some websites. The pathway which I'm going to share is based on my own story, what has actually worked for me. And that's why I think it might be relevant to all of you in this call. So I was a pure mechanical engineer till 2017. I graduated from IIT Madras with a BTech in mechanical engineering. At that time, I had no knowledge about machine learning. In fact, I had joined MIT for my PhD in mechanical engineering itself. At that time, I wanted to become a professor in mechanical. But then what happened was in the second year of my PhD, I attended a career fair. And there I saw the companies which were coming for recruitment. And there I saw that almost all of the companies which were coming, those were in the field of machine learning and artificial intelligence. And at that moment, I realized that uh, I definitely need to upskill myself with machine learning and AI knowledge if I want a job, because the number of jobs in traditional fields were decreasing very rapidly. Then I slowly started losing interest in the field of mechanical engineering completely. And that's when I switched to ML. This was 6 to 7 years back. Now, what happened in the next 3 years was pretty amazing. I found a new research group Then I published machine learning papers, which today have 400 plus citations. And I also defended my thesis at MIT with a machine learning PhD. Here are some of the papers which I published since I started my transition to ML. So all this happened within a period of 3 years. This is a paper published in Cell Patterns on the left hand side. On the right hand side, you'll see a paper published in Science. Both of these are prestigious journals. This report, Sandia report, is a work we did with the US government during COVID-19. So these were some of my publications. Now the question which all of you might be thinking was, how was I able to transition to machine learning by being a mechanical engineer, and within a period of 3 years, how did I manage to have publications? Plus, not just publications, within period of 3 years I also received job offers from some top companies. And this is what I'm going to share with all of you in today's webinar, that how is it possible to make this transition and what's the pathway which I followed, which all of you can follow. So first, let me go to the form which many of you might have filled by now. So there are around 28 responses to the form. I encourage others also to fill this form. So let's see, we have about 5, 7, 8 overall mechanical, electrical, civil engineers. We have 10 CS people here, and then we have people from IT, computer applications, mathematics, physics, finance, fluid mechanics, aerospace, wide range of fields. And there is a split between most of the people in this call are beginners or basic level, I would say around 80 to 85%. That's great. So the webinar is targeted especially towards all of the people belonging to several of these fields. So I particularly was in the first field, mechanical, but whatever lessons which I have learned from my field can be equally applied to all of these fields. So the first lesson which I want all of you to take away from today's webinar is that earlier, before I transitioned to machine learning, I used to think that machine learning is meant only for CS students. And I had this belief that non-CS students can never transition to machine learning. I want to tell all of you that this is completely wrong. Take my example. I had no background in formal CS. I did not take data structures, algorithms courses. I did not take any CS course in undergraduate. I was a core mechanical engineer. So please keep in mind that whichever field you belong to, whether it's CS or whether it's any of these fields, all of you can successfully transition to machine learning. That's one of the first roadblock to clear in your mind, that someone you should have this belief that no matter which field you belong to, you can transition to machine learning. That's the first thing. So now I'm going to start the webinar and explain how was all of this possible for a mechanical engineer. These publications, these are the companies from which I received job offers after my transition to machine learning. And once I upskilled myself with ML, the job market completely opened for me, which was not really possible with just mechanical engineering. In fact, to all the people in this call, I can very confidently say right now that if you transition to ML and AI, the number of job opportunities, the number of research opportunities which will open up will probably be 5 to 10 times more than just sticking to a traditional field. This was not the case 10 to 15 years back, but now the entire landscape has changed. So when I came back to India from the US, I was thinking about what made it possible for me to transition to machine learning so successfully. And then I realized that there were three major reasons, and I'll cover all three reasons in today's webinar. The first reason was that I accidentally discovered a new field of ML, and that field is called scientific ML. I'm even writing this in the chat right now. This field, I did not know about this field, but the new research group I joined happened to be working in this field. And when I started learning this field, I realized that the way traditional ML is taught is not correct for most engineers. And this accidental path which I discovered helped a lot in my successful transition. The second thing which is extremely important is that when I was in mechanical engineering, I actually had no belief that I could transition to ML. So I met a senior who was 3 years senior to me, and he gave me the confidence that you can transition to ML. It's completely possible. So you need that belief. So I hope that this webinar will serve as that kind of a belief system for all of you, that even you can successfully make this transition. And finally, the third is probably the most important takeaway from today's webinar, is that what many students do nowadays is that they just do quick Kaggle projects or GitHub projects and add it to their resume. I did not change my resume for 2 years after I transitioned to ML. That's because I did not focus on just toy projects. I converted all of my projects into research publications, and that made a huge difference. I only updated my resume when I had research publications on my profile. I'll show you some resumes today also in the webinar, and I'll show you what a strong resume looks like and what a weak resume looks like. But please keep this in mind. Everyone has projects these days. That's not going to differentiate you from the rest of the applicants. But what's very important is if you can convert those projects into research publications. So let's get started with these reasons one by one. So first, let's get started with the traditional approach. Now, let me explain this to you with a live example. I'm going to share a link in the chat right now. If all of you can go to this link along with me so that we can explore this together. This is the learning material or the course module for machine learnings for MIT's machine learning course. This is a free course offered by MIT, and their entire course is available online for learning. And they have divided it into week 1, week 2, week 3 up till week 8. And this is usually the kind of lesson structure followed by all introductory, all beginner machine learning courses. You'll see that they first start with linear classifiers, then they move to non-linear classifiers, then they teach neural networks, and towards the end, they teach unsupervised learning and reinforcement learning. Up till this point, it's fine. But the major issue comes when you start looking at the projects. Let's take a look at some of these projects which are done in these introductory or these beginner level courses. It's either at automatic review analyzer, or it might be, let's say, digit recognition, as has been mentioned here, or it can be something related to collaborative filtering, which is Netflix movie recommendations. In my presentation, I have collected a list of some of these projects, usually which are done in introductory ML courses. So see, automatic review analyzer is the first project, then digit recognition, then collaborative filtering, which is Netflix movie recommendations, then let's say sentiment analysis. Do you see the problems with these projects? The main issue with these projects is that, let's say if you belong to these fields, right? Let's say you belong to all of these fields: mechanical, electrical, civil, CS, IT, data science. What is the relation with a digit recognition project or a movie analyzer project with your field? If you are a mechanical engineer or an electrical engineer, or let's say a CS engineer, why would you do a sentiment analysis project? It's not related to your main field of study at all. If you are, let's say, doing fluid mechanics, why would you do a Netflix movie recommendation project? So these projects don't show you how to combine machine learning with domain specific knowledge at all. And that's why it's not the best way for engineers to learn, because these projects are toy projects. So the second disadvantage of these projects is that we cannot publish research papers with these projects. Why? Because these are toy projects. Everyone in the world is doing these projects. These are not very serious ML projects. So ideally, what we need is we need very impactful and serious projects, which, let's say, which show you that without leaving your main field, let's say mechanical, electrical, chemical, etc., you should be taught how to integrate machine learning with your main field. And those should be the type of projects which you are doing. So let me show you some of the projects, and let us compare the impact of these projects versus the type of projects which I showed you earlier. So let's say instead of the digit recognition project or the movie recognition project, you do a project in which you use machine learning to model COVID-19 infections in all regions of the world. To all the CS engineers in this webinar, what if you do this project? In fact, I did this when I was transitioning to ML. This was the project which helped me transition. And here is the research paper which came out of this project. What I did in this project is I combined machine learning with a very impactful problem, which is COVID-19 spread. And this is the project which I worked on, and I converted it into a research publication. I'll share this link with you in the chat so that you can go through it. That's just one project for CS engineers. Now let me show you some project for other engineers in this call. Let's say if you're a chemical engineer or a biological engineer, What if you do a project in which you recover a chemical reaction equation just from the data alone? So let's say if you have data from a chemical reaction system and you do a project which recovers a chemical reaction equation just from the data. Now, this project combines your main field of chemical or biological engineering with machine learning. That's the first advantage. The second advantage is that no one else would be doing these type of projects. These are unique projects, and that's why they are very impactful projects, which you can add to your resume and even convert these projects into research publications. The third, let's say if you're a physicist, you can use machine learning to predict black hole dynamics. If you are in economics or data scientist or finance, you can use machine learning to predict economic market forces like supply and demand. These are extremely impactful projects which are so much better than doing, let's say, a sentiment analysis project. There are numerous other examples, such as using machine learning for biochemistry, then using machine learning to analyze fluid mechanics problems, climate problems, etc. So these are projects which combine machine learning with your domain knowledge. And all of these projects come under the bucket of scientific machine learning. So if you learn to do these type of projects on your own, you will have a very strong foundation in ML. And more than that, you will see how to integrate ML in your main field. So if let's say you have spent 5 years learning mechanical or electrical engineering, you can still stick to that field, but integrate ML with that field. Second thing, which is very important, is that you can do independent research with these projects and convert it into research publications. Then you can include all of these projects on your resume. And then that will open up the door to multiple job opportunities like it did for me. As I told you, this was the research paper which made all the difference in my career. I was a CS student at MIT, and all other CS students were doing natural language processing, computer vision, let's say. But I used machine learning and applied it to a scientific problem like COVID-19 spread. And I transitioned using the field of scientific machine learning. In fact, if you start doing these projects, you can do several other things. So, for example, I know that there are many professors in the world right now who have just opened up their scientific machine learning labs and they are looking for interested students to work with. Now, not many people know about this field of scientific ML. So, if you start doing projects in the field of scientific machine learning, you can even reach out to these professors. I'll tell you in a bit how to start doing projects in this field. Don't worry about that. For now, just keep in mind that if you do a project which combines machine learning with your domain knowledge, it comes under the category of scientific machine learning. And with that, you can do extremely impactful things in your career, such as publishing papers, reaching out to professors, starting projects with them, etc. So not only it helps you in your career, but if you are applying to grad school, it will improve your grad school profile by around 5 to 10 times. Now, scientific machine learning is meant for all of these domains which are listed on the screen right now. And in fact, all of the domains which you guys mentioned in this form, every field here can be combined with machine learning to give a scientific machine learning project, which can later be converted into a publication. So the main thing which I'm trying to convey in the first half of this webinar is that there are two ways to go about it. The first way is to go the traditional machine learning route in which you take introductory courses and you do these projects. I'm not saying that you should not do this. I'm saying that you should definitely do this, but don't stop here. Don't add these projects to your resume. Try to transition to the field of scientific machine learning, convert your projects into research publications, and then you can add them to your resume. So now, first I'm going to tell you the resources in this traditional path. So let's say someone of you in this call, let's say, is a complete beginner, right? And they want to start with machine learning. Okay. As a complete beginner, what you should do is follow this list of resources to transition to ML. And I'm just going to share this list of resources right now in this call so that everyone can access. Okay. So just go to this link right now. I've opened the access so you can directly see this Google Drive doc. So if you're a complete beginner in machine learning, first you should start doing courses which are introductory ML courses, but with a very deep focus on fundamentals. So I have shared here three links which are from our own YouTube channel, Vijwara Machine Learning Teach by Doing, Visuara neural network from scratch, and Visuara decision trees from scratch. So this is the machine learning. Not this. This one is the machine learning teach by doing playlist which we have. So look at the first lecture. It has around 100,000 views. You can start from this lecture series. Then once you finish this lecture series, then you can go to deep learning lecture series, which is building a neural network from scratch. Once you have finished this lecture series on neural network from scratch, then you can go to building decision trees from scratch. I've mentioned all of these over here. Okay. Now, one thing which I want to mention to all of you is that let's look at the number of views. Okay. 90,000 people started watching this lecture one. Then you see there is an exponential decrease in the number of views. And this is one major reason why many people cannot transition to machine learning is simply discipline. They don't have the discipline to watch every single lecture in the series. So not all of us can watch passive videos, right? Many of us like to learn live. Many of us like to listen to an instructor teaching us live. So if you are in this category, we are going to share our live courses which are starting from January 2025. But if you are learning from YouTube, at least make a commitment to yourself that if I start, I will not stop until I watch all the 30 or 35 lectures. Because if you stop halfway, then you are not committing too much, then you are not disciplined. It's extremely important for you to be disciplined and then complete learning till the end. Now, these are the first three courses which you should definitely start doing. So, this is what I've bucketed in the category of fundamentals, which is F. The second thing which you should start doing is these projects, and you can start with toy projects. So, start with toy projects, at least that will give you a feel of machine learning. Start with these toy projects, housing price predictor, digit recognizer. I've given the links to all of these projects. These are Kaggle links. So you can just head over to these links and you can start doing these projects. Okay, so you can head over to, let's say this is the housing price regression, then you can go to digit recognizer. And what you can do after you reach this Kaggle repositories is that you can make or you can open it in Google Colab. So when you click on open in Google Colab, the Google Colab interface will open up and you can directly run these codes. Even if you don't understand everything, it's fine. Later you can search Chat GPT and try to understand what's going on. But your first goal should be to start with fundamentals F and then projects P. And it's fine to start with toy projects. Until this point, don't add anything on your resume. So fundamentals project FP. The third thing what you should be doing is research. That's R. Now that's why I'm explaining to you about scientific machine learning. So this is the three path approach to learning. It's the FPR approach of learning, which I'm also typing in the chat, which is starting with fundamentals, then doing some projects, but not adding anything in the resume until you go ahead and convert those projects into research. And that's where scientific machine learning comes into the picture. I'm explaining scientific machine learning because you can use it to convert your projects into research publications. But these first two, F and P, are definitely needed for you to understand the field of machine learning and to get your hands dirty in this field. So please, you can download this document or bookmark it for future references so that at least you have an initial pathway to start. So this is the FPR technique which we recommend in all of our webinars. It start with fundamentals, move to projects, but don't stop there. Convert your projects into research publication. And this is the true pathway if someone wants to transition into ML. And this will not happen quickly. You cannot build your profile in 3 months or 2 months. It will at least take 6 to 8 months minimum for you to build your profile. So now I want to show you two resumes and you yourself tell me the difference between these resumes. Okay. So first I'm going to show the first resume. Take a look at this. You'll see that they have some professional experience and there have been three projects over here. You see generalized plant disease detector, let's say, is one project. Now, okay, without telling my views, first I will show you both the resumes and I will ask you yourself to tell me what's the difference. This is the first resume. Now check out this resume where there is work experience and projects have been done, but there are this publication section where these are some of the research publications from this author in the field of machine learning. Now, can someone just write down in the chat which resume you think is better or which resume is worst? Based on what I've told you so far in this webinar, what do you think of these two resumes? So people are saying second one is better. Second one is better, right? All of you agree. In fact, now let us look at the title of this post, which I was saying. The second resume got the person shortlisted for Meta, Microsoft, Nvidia, Uber, Samsung, Intel, and all of these companies for machine learning. Whereas the first resume is of a person who did not get any offers and in fact was fired from one company due to lack of experience. But the main difference which I want to highlight between these two resumes is this section on the research publications. Take a look at this section. You don't need these many, right? Even if one or two strong publications are there, your profile will stand out. But you see the problem with this resume, there is this plant disease detector project. Now, any employer, when we are looking to hire candidates, all of us know that a plant disease detector project is available on Kaggle. If you just search plant disease detector project, there are several files which are already available in Kaggle, which I can just download right now, and I can claim that I have done this project and I can add it to my resume. This is a toy project. So this candidate who has added this project in the resume does not make any impact at all. But publications are a completely different thing because publications are unique, right? This publication, Multitask Federated Reinforcement Learning, this is a publication which only belongs to this author. No one else has worked on this. So that makes the author stand out more. So I hope all of you have. So let me share these links also. This is the second link where you can see the resume for your reference. And this is the first link, which is, well, I'll not share the first link because I don't think this is a good resume for reference. But at least check out the second link, which I've shared in the chat, which confirms the FPR framework, which we are trying to teach you fundamentals, practicals, but don't stop at projects or practicals, move to research. So now many of you in this webinar would be thinking that, okay, let's say I start with fundamentals and then I start with projects. How do I convert my projects to research? Because the college ecosystem where we are in, or if we are working in industry, it's not usually conducive for research, right? Either there is no one around us who is doing research, or we don't have good professors in our universities who can guide us for research. In such cases, we have to do it by ourselves, because that's, if there is no help in your college or in your industry, if research is not encouraged, uh, we have to do research ourselves. So someone has asked question that you're from pharma background, how can ML help in the stream, right? And that's what I'm going to explain in the next section. Now I'm going to give a brief introduction to the field of scientific machine learning, and I'll also show you a sample project in this field. And after this section, I'm hoping that all of these people in the webinar will learn a pathway towards how they can use ML in their field and convert it into a research project. So at this stage, I'm assuming that, let's say you will go through the fundamentals and projects, and then you will think about how do I move to research. So in this next section, always try to imagine your field and try to think about what I am explaining, how you can apply to your field, so that after this webinar, you already have some sort of a research problem in your mind. Okay, so what is the field of scientific machine learning? As the name is itself suggests, it's science mixed with machine learning, right? So it combines the field of machine learning with domain knowledge. What's a domain knowledge? An electrical engineer, three people in this call who have studied the field for 4 to 5 years, that's their domain knowledge. So scientific machine learning is the branch of ML which combines ML with domain knowledge. So what's the main difference between traditional ML and scientific ML? Traditional ML is like a black box. If we ask it why it's working, it's usually not known because there are so many parameters, there are so many knobs which can be fine-tuned, that it's difficult to know why exactly some things are working. But scientific machine learning is like shining a torch on that black box. So we can ask questions to that black box, we can open up the black box, and then we can try to see why it is really working. That's why engineers like us like the field of scientific machine learning. So scientific ML combines two things. It combines neural networks with the interpretability of scientific structures. So two things are mixed together, neural networks with scientific structures. So you might be thinking, what are scientific structures? I'll explain that to you in a moment. But for now, just remember that neural networks are combined with scientific structures, right? So what are scientific structures? Essentially, anything which has an ordinary differential equation or a partial differential equation is a scientific structure. So, for example, let's say if someone is in the field of epidemiology, right? You go to the internet and you search epidemiology ODE. So then immediately this SIR model will appear. This is an ordinary differential equation. This equation. How many of you in this call know about ordinary differential equations? Can you just type yes in the chat if you know about ordinary differential equation or partial differential equations? Okay, so these many people are typing yes in the chat, which is good, right? So you know about you know about ODEs and PDEs. Now think about your field, whichever field you belong to, and think about an ordinary differential equation or partial differential equation. Just think about something. So for example, if you are in civil engineering, right? Beam dynamics is one thing, and you can search beam dynamics ODE. That will give you the ordinary differential equations for beam dynamics. See, this is an ordinary differential equation. Good. So if you're a civil engineer, you have thought of this. Think of some ordinary differential equation or partial differential equation for your field, whichever it might be. And to all those who don't know ODEs or PDEs, I'll just give a quick refresher right now. So ordinary differential equation essentially is like a rate of change, right? So force equal to mass into acceleration, and acceleration can be written as d square x by dt square. That's rate of change. So this is an ordinary differential equation. Anything which has a rate of change, that's an ordinary differential equation. Partial differential equation go one step further, where we have two independent variables. Can someone tell me what this operator is over here, which I'm highlighting right now? What's it called? Does anyone know the name for this operator? So del is just this inverted thing, but what is del square? Del square u. It's not actually gradient, it's the Laplacian. So del square u is the Laplacian operator. And what this says is that du by dt minus alpha times d square u by dx square plus d square u by dy square plus d square u by dz square is 0. So here there are four variables, time, x, y, and z. That's why this is a partial differential equation. One of the most famous partial differential equation is Navier-Stokes equation, right? How many of you are familiar with the Navier-Stokes equation? So whichever room you are sitting in right now, the air is flowing around you. That's a fluid, right? So the flow of anything, the flow of air, the flow of fluids is usually governed by this equation, which is called as a Navier-Stokes equation. That is another example of a partial differential equation. So the reason I'm explaining this to you is that whichever field you go to, whichever engineering field, there are usually some ordinary differential equations or partial differential equations which govern that field. So the first ingredient of a scientific machine learning problem is to identify an ODE or PDE in your field. So to all of the people in the call right now, how many of you have identified an ODE or PDE? Just think about something and type yes if you have thought about an ODE or PDE in your field. This is very important for us to move to the next section. So unless you have thought of something in your mind, it will be difficult for you to understand the next section. So just think about something. If you're in climate science, that's great because there are so many ODs. In fact, Navier-Stokes equation itself, you can think about it if you're in climate science. So whichever field you are in, just like if you're in battery engineering or data science, whichever it is, just think about something. If you have not thought about anything, just think about this SIR model of epidemiology. This is the one of the simplest ordinary differential equation which governs the spread of disease. Just think about these three equations if you cannot come up with any ODE or PDE. All right, now I'm going to move to a next section, which is the second ingredient. So the first ingredient of scientific ML is ODEs or PDEs. The second ingredient of scientific ML is neural networks. And the main property of neural networks, which we are going to use, is that neural networks are universal function approximators. This means that no matter how complex the underlying function is, a large enough neural network can approximate that function. If you have a neural network with huge number of hidden layers or parameters, that can approximate any function out there. Just remember this for now. So there are just two ingredients, ODEs, PDEs, and you mix them with neural networks and you get a scientific ML problem. Now I'm going to show you how to construct and solve a scientific ML problem. I'm going to take a problem in the field of ecology, but whatever process I'm explaining to you, you can apply it to that ODE or PDE which you have chosen in your mind. So this is the problem I'm looking at. This is, let's say you are in a forest, right? And there are predators and there are preys. So predators are foxes or wolves and prey is the rabbit. So the question is that if there is a forest with predators and preys and you put them together, how do their population evolve in time? So you might be thinking that that's easy, just the predators will eat all the prey, that's it. But it's not really that easy because if the wolves eat all the rabbits, then the wolves have nothing to eat. Then the wolf population will also start to decrease, right? So actually what happens when you put these predators and prey in one room is that there are these oscillations which are seen. So the prey population increases and decreases and keeps on oscillating, and the predator population increases and decreases and keeps on oscillating. This is called as the cyclic dance of rabbits and wolves. And this cyclic dance is represented by an ordinary differential equation, which is given by this. So this is the rate of change of rabbits. Of course, depends on the rabbit population, but it depends on an interaction term between the rabbits and the wolves. Similarly, the rate of change of wolves, of course, depends on the wolf population and it depends on the interaction term, right? That's the ODE. So there is an ordinary differential equation which governs these dynamics. But now here is how we construct the scientific machine learning problem. This is the best part. Let's say you are in a forest, right? And you have collected the data of rabbits and wolves and you have observed this oscillatory nature. So you have this data. So you have seen the oscillations in the population of rabbits and wolves. But the main catch is that you don't know the underlying equations. You don't know the interaction term. So the catch is that you don't have these full underlying equations with you. In fact, you don't have these interaction terms. You have the data of rabbits and wolves which you have collected, but you don't know the interaction term. Intuitively, you know that the rate of change of rabbits depends on the rabbits population. You know that the rate of change of wolves depends on the wolf population. But the question is that just based on the data, can you find out this interaction term? And this is where neural networks come into the picture. What you do next is that since neural networks can approximate any function out there, we don't know what this interaction term is, right? So let's replace the interaction term with a neural network. This is the main crux of scientific machine learning. There are some parts of the physics which are called missing physics. And if we don't know some parts, we just replace those parts with neural networks. And then what do we do? Then we just train the neural network based on our data. And then we recover the missing pieces of the puzzle. Then when the neural network is trained on the data, we'll recover that this indeed is beta into x into y. And we recover that this indeed is gamma into x into y. So this is also called as recovering. I'm typing this in the chat. This is also called as recovering the missing physics. So whatever ordinary differential equation or partial differential equation you thought of, just assume that some elements of that are not known and you want to discover them from the data alone. You can do that using scientific machine learning. Let's say you are in material sciences and you want to discover new materials. You have some parts of the ordinary differential equation, but you don't have the exact ordinary differential equation. You replace the portions which you don't know with a neural network and train the neural network based on the underlying data. So scientific machine learning is used to complete the missing physics. In fact, that's the simplest thing which I did in my paper. So if you go through my paper, which I shared with you, there is a section over here. See, I start with the SIR model and then I augment this model with neural networks because the SIR model does not take into account quarantining. And during COVID-19, quarantining was done a lot. Now do not know the physical form which quarantine will take. So what do? I just replace the quarantine with a neural network and I train the neural network on country specific infection data and I recover the neural network. That's all. That's all I did in this problem. I'll share this paper with you again, and hopefully now when you read the paper, you will understand it much better. So whichever ODE or PDA you thought of, try to think about how you can replace some parts of that with a neural network, or how you can augment that with a neural network. And that can be the beginning of your research problem, which no one else would have worked on so far. And that's the power of scientific machine learning. So when you do F and P, let's say initial fundamentals and projects, next what you should be doing is start doing scientific machine learning research. And in fact, what I've done towards the end is that I've shared some scientific machine learning research papers with you, which I'll also show right now. So for example, this is the paper which applies scientific machine learning to civil engineering. This is the paper which applies scientific machine learning to battery degradation. This is the paper which applies scientific machine learning to chemical reaction systems. And in all of these papers, the same thing is done. They start with an ODE. So, for example, here they start with an ODE and then they replace portions which they don't know with a neural network. That's it. That's the common thing you will notice when you read all these papers. So, what you can do after this webinar is over is just go through these four papers. And I think you will understand them much better now that you have the context of this webinar. And that's when you can start implementing the final piece of the puzzle, right? F, P, and R. So that's when you can start implementing the research piece of the puzzle, the R. That's the most important thing which will distinguish you from the other candidates. So in this last part of the presentation, I have just added some slides on the different fields where scientific ML can be applied. Over the last 3 to 4 years, people have published papers on scientific ML for earthquake safe buildings, scientific ML for predicting longer lasting battery materials, scientific ML for combustion models, scientific ML for predicting properties of new propulsion devices. In fact, if you and even scientific ML for quantum circuits, scientific ML for biological systems, we even have this boot camp which is called as scientific machine learning boot camp, where you can check this out if you are interested to learn scientific ML in a formal manner. Just you can think about enrolling in some plans in this boot camp. The main goal is to ultimately publish papers in the field of scientific ML, which now we have done with so many students. One of the papers was even accepted to NeurIPS. So the whole point of this until this stage is that the fundamentals, practicals, or the projects and the research can be in the field of scientific machine learning. Now I've given you the pathway to do all of these things. Fundamentals, I've given you the pathway here. Projects, I've given you the pathway here. And research, I've given you some research paper links. And if you are interested to do this in a formal, do the research in a formal manner, then the link to the bootcamp I've already shared in the chat, which I just shared right now again. So this is the whole pathway which we wanted to cover in the machine learning engineer transition. Now, one more thing which so many students tell us is that they prefer live learning, right, compared to passive videos. So all of the videos which you see over here are passive videos, and it's difficult to maintain the motivation level of students. That's pretty obvious now from the views. In all the famous YouTube playlists, you'll see that the views go down after the first lecture. Even if you search Andrew NG, Andrew NG ML course, right? You can check the number of views in this, and you will see that it always decreases. So the first lecture has around 3.1 million views, and now let's take a look at lecture number 17. Lecture number 17 has 88,000 views, right? So it decreased by a factor of 100. So many students have shared with us that they prefer live learning, and that's the reason we have started live. We are teaching live. All of these concepts which have been mentioned here, me, Dr. Rajat, and Dr. Shridat will be teaching the students live, just like it's taught in a university. So now I'll stop sharing my screen, and Dr. Rajat will explain the next part about these live courses. Yeah, good evening, everyone. So, there is a common perception that a lot of students in this world are currently pursuing AI. And so many students feel this insecurity that if they step into the field right now, there will be so much competition. And that is fair to assume if you're looking at it from the outside. Since we are also interviewing a lot of candidates for AI positions in our company, we have seen. Uh, so based on our own experiences, what I've seen is that even though it is appearing that a lot of students are taking AI/ML courses, they are upskilling themselves. The problem is that most of these students do not understand the concepts in the depth. So they know overall, okay, what is the meaning of an activation function, what is the meaning of an hidden layer, etc. But if you ask them questions which are 2 or 3 levels deeper, suddenly the candidate gets stuck. And this is true with majority of the candidates. I would say more than 90% of the candidates currently who are projecting themselves as experts in AI/ML. So one common example that we typically ask in some of our interviews is that, let's say, imagine that if all the activation functions in a neural network that you have are linear activation functions, right? So what kind of functions would this neural network be able to approximate? And the moment we put this question across, we have seen students get completely confused. And the reason is that they have not even thought of how to build a neural network from scratch. All they have done is that they have used a Python library to build a neural network or upload a neural network into their AI model. And this is where I think the skill level is lacking. And what industry needs currently is that industry doesn't need people who are coders, because you can get codes using generative AI, but they need people who have extremely good foundations in AI ML, and people who have the confidence to take it from the foundation level to the project and publications level. That's why we emphasize on the FBR technique. And when we started creating the YouTube channel playlists, we realized that a lot of students started saying that this is helping us. It's like watching a movie where every time you come back to the movie, you learn something new. And then we thought, okay, why don't we start something live so that students can benefit even more? So I wanted to share some details regarding our live courses with all of you. So we are starting this starting from next year, that is next January, and we have partnered with a very reputed university currently, because we wanted to give certifications uh, which are certified by us as well as by university, so that the students can benefit when they write this in their resume. So overall, we have two broad level baskets in the courses that we are offering. The first basket is called as the minor in AI. The minor in AI is ideally meant for students who are beginners, or students who consider themselves as they know something in AI ML, but they don't really have the basics clear, which is typical of the candidates that I mentioned, the interview experiences that we had. So the minor is structured as a bundle of 4 courses. And the first course is the Foundations in AI ML, where we will completely focus on the mathematics which is needed to understand the more finer concepts and the more detailed concepts as you go along the curriculum. So the first course will be completely focused on the different maths concepts that you need, which involve probability, statistics, linear algebra, and calculus. In case some students do not know this, we'll be starting it from the basics. So we will not assume any prior knowledge. Later, as you go in the second semester, our approach of teaching neural networks is very different. Uh, our aim is to teach students how to build a neural network completely from scratch. So imagine that you're transported back in time 20, 30 years, and you do not have access to these amazing computational facilities that we have right now. But all you have to do is think from the basics and try to see how can we construct a neural network? How should the hidden layers be constructed? What should the activation functions be, etc. The moment you start to learn in this approach, you see that the confidence level that you have once you go with this approach is completely different. You suddenly have the confidence that even if you get any new problem thrown at you, you can analyze the problem from the basics and you can give a solution uh, which is correct, and which has the foundations clear. And then the third and fourth projects are going to focus on NLP and CV mastery. And finally, large language models theory and deployment. So for students who are not aware, ChatGPT is an example of a large language model. And this field is experiencing a tremendous boom. This is what we call as generative AI. A lot of companies are building applications that are using these LLMs for practical purposes. So recently we interacted with a group of founders who developed a who started their own company where they are saving costs of these fashion brands who have to hire models and they have to shoot at expensive locations. Instead of that, they are replacing that entire workflow using generative AI. They are creating dresses, models, and everything on the software, on the computer. Now, this is possible only because of the development of large language models. And for you to be able to, let's say, understand how this works and to build and fine tune large language models on your own, you need to understand the theory in its depth. Otherwise, you'll just have a knowledge which is at the surface. So that's why we have added this fourth course. So by taking the entire minor program, we'll be completely equipped to go down into any one of the paths which Dr. Raj mentioned, either doing research, going into industry, or starting your own company, because the barrier to entry has really gone down in all of these fields. Even if you don't like coding, still you can build impactful projects. So this is the first basket, which is the minor curriculum. The second is more focused on generative AI and large language model mastery. Generative AI typically builds on the basics of AI ML. So it requires some prior understanding, but the courses itself are being taught completely from the basics of generative AI. So we'll help you understand how the field of generative AI has evolved and why currently there is so much hype. What are different companies like Google, then Perplexity, OpenAI focusing on? What is the competition that is going on between these companies? And the second course is actually very interesting. It is building your own GPT from scratch. A lot of us have used ChatGPT, but rarely we uh, uncover the mask and we try to see what is underneath. What are the gears? What are the building blocks? So, at the heart of a GPT is a transformer block, and it is a wonderful paper which came out around 10 years back, which really changed the whole field. And yeah, so we'll be starting from that. We'll be helping you understand how a transformer works, how is it at the heart of the entire GPT application, and how you can build and deploy your own GPTs from scratch. This will give you confidence into the next two courses, which is building a production level LLM and then doing a capstone project as well. So the example that I gave you of a generative AI company helping fashion brands, you'll be able to actually build applications like that once you take once you take this course. So these are the two baskets overall. They consist of four courses, and the minor program, how we have structured is that it is structured as a 2-year program, which means every single semester you can take one course. There is also an accelerator version of the minor program where if you have the time to take two courses per semester, you can complete the entire minor in the span of 1 year. The program electives or the generative AI LLM mastery, however, will be completed in a span of 1 year. There are four courses with two courses running per semester. So these are the two broad baskets, and there are a lot of students who are enrolling in these programs. We will actually be yeah, closing the registrations in some time. Raj will talk about the deadline also. But I wanted to explain about this scientific machine learning also. So we have a scientific machine learning course over here, which will be taught in the next semester. So this will be taught live, uh, and we'll be teaching you about what is Julia language, how to code in Julia, merge your how to merge your core field with neural networks. So whatever Dr. Raj covered as a part of this entire webinar will be actually taught to you live. And after this, the main aim of this is to equip you with the confidence of building research projects in the field of scientific machine learning. So overall, there are these two broad level baskets of minor in AI, generative AI, and large language models, and finally the course on scientific machine learning, which will be taught live by us. So yeah, so this is all that I wanted to explain. I'll stop sharing my screen and we'll probably take a few questions. So regarding the deadlines, we are going to start in Jan first or second week, and we are planning to close the deadlines in 1 week. So this is the last week left open for the registrations. Registrations have actually started 3 months back itself. So already around 60, 70 people have registered for multiple courses. Um, After the end of, so by December end, we will make a list of all finalized candidates, and after that, no more registrations will be taken because live classes will start. So the lecturers will be me, Dr. Rajat, and Dr. Sridhar, and we are planning to teach just like how we were taught during our PhDs at MIT. So the next opportunity to register will again come in July 2025 because these will be semester-wise courses. So if you don't register for Jan to July, then you can again register for the July to December cohort. And even enrollment for individual courses is possible. Uh, all of that is mentioned on the website. So whatever you are interested in, you can go ahead and register for that. Okay, let's see if there are any other questions. So installments, we don't have installments at this moment because the demand is so high and we want to limit the number of registrations. So that option is not there. There are some people who have asked like, can they do both the generative AI bootcamp and the minor simultaneously? Yeah. So that is being done by some students who want ML, machine learning, deep learning expertise as well as generative AI expertise. So there is a lot of options to mix and match. You can either take the minor four course bundle, generative AI four course bundle, or you can even take both together. For beginners, for absolute beginners, the minor will be the best course, the best bundle, the minor in AI. Okay. So SciML, right? You can take the SciML course along with the bundle. So the best thing is that if you want to learn SciML along with the basics of ML and DL, just take the four course bundle and take SciML along with it. So then that way you'll learn both. So there is a question by Richard about the standard research course. So the standard research course, which is the SciML researcher plan, will always be open. That is throughout the entire year. But the courses, they have a specific time duration in which you can register for the courses. So that is the main difference between the live courses and the SciML researcher plan. There is also a question about uh, can SciML be implemented in CFD? So, yeah, there have been some recent studies where scientific machine learning has actually been used to understand fluid flows better because it is really something that integrates well with differential equations. So, any fluid flow, if you consider there is a differential equation at the heart of it, and usually what happens is that whatever you get from the data does not match the evolution of the differential equation, and there is a mismatch. So whenever there is a mismatch, that is the ripe area where SciML can be applied because you can fit a neural network there and try to recover the missing physics. Um, yeah, so if there are any more questions, you can just email us at hello@vijuvara.com. And people who want to directly register, they can register from the website also. So I'm sharing the website link also over here. I'll share the direct link. Yeah. So you can directly register by clicking on this website. Okay, so I think the time is up now. It was great interacting with all of you, and all the best everyone in your AI/ML transition journey. Thank you very much. We'll be uploading the recording on YouTube. In case some of you have missed some sections, you can always refer to the recording. Thank you so much, everyone. Bye.